Hello everyone. I would like to welcome you to the 8 Roadblocks to a Successful CRS Implementation webinar. Moving to a new CRS sounds exciting, promising, and even a bit scary, but who knows how many roadblocks will keep you from reaching your goal. Well, I've got two industry veterans here today that have been there and done that, and they've agreed to walk us through the common barriers hotels face when undertaking a CRS implementation. Hello, my name is Jason Emanis, the VP of Marketing at SHR, and I will be your moderator. Let's kick things off by introducing our panel. Joining us today is Sally Ramos, Director of Implementations and Support here at SHR. Sally has been in the hospitality industry for 20+ years, working for large hotel brands from Red Lion to Starwood, where she managed their GDS and IDS strategies. And she's a regular user. She regularly uses that firsthand experience when helping SHR clients through their implementations. I think she's literally seen it all. I'm looking at her now. How are you doing, Sally?
Doing well, thank you.
Okay. And we have special guest Chuck Valentino. Mr. Valentino is the Vice President for Vagabond Inn Corporation, where he manages and implements all hotels and franchise procedures. He is a certified hotel administrator who has advanced through the ranks from porter to assistant manager, manager, and district manager prior to the company's acquisition of the Vagabond Inn chain in 1994. Hello, Chuck.
Good morning.
And at this time, I just want to remind everybody, or let everybody know that we will be taking questions, but we'll address the questions at the end of the webinar, and you can use your little Q&A box to the right on your screen to go ahead and ask your question as we go through the call, so don't hesitate to do that. And let's see, before I ask my first question of our panel, let me take a look at the audience. So looking over the audience titles, it's pretty diverse. It goes everywhere from general managers to corporate director reservations to sales, even revenue management. And that's good. That's a interesting group, but I'd like to dig a little deeper to help our panel speak directly to this audience's needs today. So in order to do that, we're going to ask a couple of questions, if you don't mind. If the audience would just respond to these polling questions. Number one, have you ever been through a CRS implementation in the past? Yes or no? And we'll see what comes up there. We have some yeses. And second, if you've not been to an implementation, you know, is one imminent in your future? Do you expect one around the corner? Or is it a little farther out, next 3 months, maybe it's within the next year? As we wait for those to come up. Okay. A little diverse there too. We got some soon. So let's jump right in. Roadblock number one. Chuck, why don't you tell us a little bit about your experience with roadblock number one, poor and limited communication?
Well, it seems counterintuitive that in today's day and age we can't just text, Facebook, email, run people down. Unfortunately, hotels are notoriously, I don't know if they're understaffed or continually chasing down some sort of problem or fire. And being able to get the key person, being able to be sure that you have nailed them down with what you expect them to do is always a challenge. You will be continually trying to get forms back, build-outs back, all the things that you need to migrate from what you have now to the new system only can come from the hotel for the most part. We had a little bit better situation because we did own a lot of that information from the franchise level, and from our current PMS provider was sort of a homegrown deal. But I can tell you, even with those advantages, we had a hard time you know, making sure the information is correct, who it was that was going to be there, you know, understanding that a no-show or a cancellation is a major thing is hard to get across to the individual owners and operators. And to be honest, you really don't have a lot of control over that. So you need to build that relationship and make sure that you're going to get them to do what you need them to do to be successful. And that can be very challenging. Sal, you agree?
I agree. I think from a vendor perspective, it's definitely identifying the key players, whether it is at the corporate level, down to a database level, or maybe even a hotel level. You know, just identifying those key players to make sure that everybody is involved through the implementation process, and making sure that everyone is identified on particular tasks that need to be actioned, whether it's at the new client level or at the vendor level. Again, with that, you know, scheduling weekly tasks, following up on those tasks, identifying the critical paths, and maybe even wrapping around an SLA for each one of those to make sure that each party delivers in a timely manner, to make sure that everything goes as planned, and that, you know, the go live date doesn't have to be moved because the path was missed. So it definitely involves a lot of the parties, from client to vendor, and just making sure everybody is you know, informed of the process.
Very good. All right, roadblock number 2. Chuck, tell us about assuming the CRS will mirror the PMS. What are we talking about?
Well, you know, I think HT&G and some things that are very positive in the industry has helped that move along. But I think when you start talking about any two systems relating to each other, there's going to be some things that fall through, that work differently. Sometimes something as simple as mapping from one to another will work, but it's just the nature of the beast. Both these systems are very complicated, and they're made by different people, and I think you need to just be aware that that's going to be on the table, and try to identify those things as soon as possible, whether it's through a beta testing or the ability to run a property for a while fully functioning if you have that luxury. But you know, there's some legacy things that just have to happen in both systems usually, and you know, they don't match up. Usually something that can be overcome, but at the same time, they don't always crop up right away. And I think that would be the thing. I would do my homework and look for those items early.
Absolutely. I agree with you on that. I mean, just identifying the PMS interface cross-reference and how the PMS talks to the CRS is huge. Many of the PMS functionality could be problematic in ways of what information could be interfaced. So definitely understanding or getting a roadmap of what is in the PMS and how it's going to talk to the CRS, and kind of getting that visual does help out a lot. And then, of course, you know, making sure that the PMS interface go live date is confirmed 1,000% prior to the cutover, to make sure that all of that information is going to be moved over from rates, availability, and inventory. And then another thing to think about as well is if the PMS is using any type of tokenization, you know, it's very important to check with the CRS to make sure that the CRS is you know, is going to be able to support that. That's one talking item. And normally whenever you schedule a PMS interface, that might be one item that gets missed, only because you're not really, it probably doesn't get, you know, brought up until the tail end of the interface. So just you know, getting all the parties involved, the client, the PMS vendor, the new vendor, just getting everybody on a conference call and making sure that they talk through the process and what the client currently has in place. Is it going to mirror, you know, to the new CRS, you know, once the PMS goes live? So just asking a lot of those key questions.
Yeah, I think you nailed a couple things there, Sally. One is, you know, being a nerd myself a little bit, you need the nerds to talk at some point. Me and you and the people at the front end and all the wonderful salespeople really don't have control over what's happening between these two systems, and all that gets worked out when you get them together. And I think that's an important point, is you really need to get the implementation people together early and make sure they're not missing anything or
Yeah.
confused about what protocols and whatever it is they may need to do to talk.
Yep.
Good advice. All right, roadblock number 3, not completing a gap analysis. Chuck?
You know, talk about learning the hard way. You know, we had obviously great expectations, and I think we nailed majority of this stuff very well, but you really have so many moving parts when we're talking about the type of integration we did, where we migrated, you know, from the new PMS to the new booking engine, including new GDS and phone, etc. Things are going to fall out. Things are going to function for a day, 2, even a week, and for whatever reason will no longer function. OTA is a perfect example. They just probably get, you know, re-updated. There's some sort of failure in the system because of, we've had areas where they were both still functioning, where the old provider didn't turn things off. So all those things will happen. You will have issues that are not addressed, and the sooner you do that gap analysis and you identify those items and you look into why they happened, and you can solve them for the next group or however you're doing your rollout, the better. I think Sally would agree.
Yeah, there's definitely reviewing everything from the contract down to simple things like images, content, interface. You know, does your CRS support a frequent guest? You know, how does it function with the current provider? How is it going to function with the new? You know, even communicating with the losing chain, making sure that they're involved, because there are some action items that need to be taken on their side once the switch has taken place. You know, a lot of hoteliers tend to forget about the losing chain. They're thinking, okay, I'm moving away to a new CRS. You know, my focus needs to be on the new CRS moving forward. But there, you know, you do have to definitely make sure you communicate with them, because there are some tasks related to GDS and IDS that have to be taken on their end to make sure they're completely off the platform. But it's, you know, reviewing everything from current to new and making sure that there's nothing missed during that process.
Yeah, if you can keep that relationship, and if they're, you know, a relatively smart previous provider, they will. Even if it costs you, I would highly recommend you keep them engaged until you feel comfortable.
Absolutely.
Okay, let's talk about roadblock number 4, not setting clear expectations of the go-live process. There's all these giggles in this webinar.
Yeah, it really is similar to what we were talking about in some of the other areas, and communication, etc. It depends on which process doesn't happen or gets dropped or, you know, miscommunicated. A day or 2 should be on everybody's mind for things like OTAs and voice and GDS and all that. There's going to be a gap, and the closer you can get to nailing that go live date, the better. As you back in OTAs or you back in, you know, whatever it takes for your vendors to switch, you know, most of them are fairly good about telling us the time period they needed, but sometimes it didn't happen, obviously. And, you know, that property is really the key component to it, right? And as we know in this business, things happen. It needs to be really stressed to them that date has bigger implications than, you know, a desk clerk not showing up, or you know, had to do the night audit last night. I've heard, you know, all of it 10 different ways. We have some financial things in there. I don't think that really bothered anybody. $2,000 or $3,000. It still didn't matter. They wanted to change. They did. And really just being transparent with them that these items are going to happen on this day. And if you're not there for them, where are they going to go? They need to understand that it's not some magic button and we push it and everything happens and it's all wonderful. And I think that's probably, from a franchise standpoint and from the corporate level, we try to want to insulate the properties from a lot of that stuff and everything, and that might have been a little bit of a mistake. I think you need to really be clear with them that there's quite a few moving parts, that there really is almost a magical thing that happens when they all start working together. And if you miss that or mess around with it or don't follow one of the steps that we've outlined, it can create some pretty big and major delays on, what I would call delivery reservations, and nobody wants that. You don't want any of your channels out for any length of time anymore. So, yeah. Sally?
And then to add on top of that, some of the not setting clear expectations, there are a lot of moving parts during an implementation. There's a lot of key players, and that's why it's very important that when the tasks are identified and there's an SLA behind it, just keep in mind there's a reason why there's an SLA and why things have to be met. If for any reason, whether it's at the client or the vendor level, if that date is not able to be met, to raise that red flag, to let everybody know, for whatever reason, the PMS interface is not going to go live on this date, and this is why, or the client may be having trouble or may not have the bandwidth to upload content into the new CRS for whatever reason. Being able to raise that red flag and letting everybody know what the problem is, that'll allow, from a vendor perspective to say, okay, well, let us know what we can do to help, kind of lend a hand. So, just making sure that we're clearly advising what the expectations are at the very beginning, during the communication process and conveying it to all parties involved.
Thank you, ma'am. Let's go to roadblock number 5. Not putting time aside for a post-go-live review. Tell us about that, Chuck.
Oh, well, the fact is everybody wants to be converted, overnight. We had, 35 properties or whatever, so that wasn't happening for sure. But I think you start to speed up that process a little bit as you go along. And I think that might be a mistake. It might be a place where you really should build in some time to review with, not only the key players at the property, but management, even your own team, just to make sure you didn't miss anything and that you feel comfortable with their level of understanding of the system, that you're not getting a call at 3 o'clock in the morning and how to close out or support is bombarded the next day. And all those things are important so they feel comfortable and buy into this whole transition, right? So it's something that sort of grew organically. I think we didn't really plan for it, but I think it's something that adds a great deal of value, and you pick up some things about even the whole process as you do that. You make some notes and you're able to say, hey, let's do this proactively from now on and do whatever it is they've come up with, or some sort of training area that we missed or we could have done better. So yeah, I think it's a pretty good idea to make some time for that, and every property is a little bit different, and it's always a good idea to be reviewing what happened at each one of these transitions. All right, Sally?
Yeah, of course, adding to that, reviewing the implementation process from beginning to end, just kind of reliving that all over again. Identifying any pending items that might still be left out there that need to be actioned, either by the client or the new provider. open up the question like, what can we do better from a vendor perspective, or maybe even from a client down to the property levels? How was your experience? Did you feel that the SLAs that were provided were okay? Getting that feedback. So if you do have to do another implementation, keeping all that in mind. What's the next approach after the implementation is done? What's the next step? Who do I lean on for help? Do I have an account manager that I go to? Do I lean on support? Kind of identifying all the key players after the implementation has gone through, and then just letting the client know, okay, we're here to help you every step of the way, even after the implementation process, and these are your contacts moving forward. But even then, just making sure that everybody stays in touch after the go live, at least for up to 4 weeks, just to make sure that everybody's comfortable with the new CRS, and letting them know who they can contact in case there's any questions. So definitely.
Yeah, just
Very
one
good.
more item. There's a few, almost inevitably, they've put in a room type they don't have anymore, or it's now a double-double or whatever. Some of those things are easy, and we found a few that aren't so easy as we built it all the way across the levels or whatever. So it's just another area to kind of be prepared for. And if you have that time, it really helps not put so much stress on the next implementation. So,
Yeah.
all right.
Agree.
Okay. We are basically at the midpoint of our roadblocks. So let me remind everybody that you can ask questions as we go along with your Q&A box there to the right of your screen. Roadblock number 6, addressing channel management differently. What do you think, Chuck?
Yeah, there's a lot of industry talk or legal talk. I don't know where you want to put it. Everybody has a different take on this now, and I think the systems are going to have to reflect that. And you can't build one channel management solution for all, as much as we'd like to. Parity is a big, giant elephant in every room these days. The OTAs are still trying to promote that, and I think the hotel world is going to have a problem with that. I think it's changed in Europe. It's going to change here. So, just lumping things together that logically make sense don't always any longer. And I think allotments and contractual stuff, a lot of those things we didn't really account for, and they do need to be, put together correctly for each hotel. It's definitely more fingers in the pie than ever, and the more flexibility you have there, and the better understanding you have of that property's goal for channel management. Could be very, very sophisticated. Could be, all on, all off. But be prepared for all those things. All right, Sally?
Yeah, especially with the allotment differences, if during the implementation process, it's very important to contact your OTA market manager to let them know that you will be moving from one CRS to the next. It may or may not affect the allotment differences. If so, at least you know ahead of time prior to that move. If you're moving from a larger chain to an independent brand, those agreements will definitely have to be revamped. They may no longer be valid when you move over. Letting them know the new CRS so they can make sure that they get all that in the agreement. Also identifying whether the new CRS is on a direct connect or whether they're going to be using some sort of channel manager. That's very important as well, and if that channel manager is interfaced with the CRS, how much footwork is the property going to have to do? Can they rely 100% on the CRS for all of the ARI and reservations that come in, or do they have to go to an outsourced channel manager to retrieve any data? So it's just asking those types of questions, making sure that it's done in a timely manner so that on the day of go live for GDS IDS that everything kind of goes active on the same date if possible. If the CRS is using a direct connect, then keep in mind that once those agreements are in place, the notifications will be sent to the new provider, most likely they will be the ones that will probably be doing the setup for you and then advising once the mapping has been completed or when it's gone live. Definitely ask those questions with the new provider. Is it something that you will have to do, or is it something they're going to be tasked to do? So just make sure that everything is clearly identified, whether it's an action item the hotel will have to do or if it's the provider. So just making sure that you ask those valid questions.
Very good. Chuck, let's talk about roadblock number 7, Global Distribution Systems and Internet Distribution Systems Hurdles.
Yeah, Sally kind of, is going to talk on this more than me. I just, again, these are areas where one size doesn't fit all. And you may be paying for things, especially at a corporate level or at a franchise level, that the properties aren't utilizing, and that you're, some of the GDS and IDS channels are expensive and don't fit with our type of properties. But it's something to keep your eye out for and be ready to have a good understanding of what each property is really wanting to utilize and why. That would be my take on it. Right, Sally?
Yeah, it goes back to what you kind of mentioned earlier, is like, keeping that relationship with the old provider, as you move over to the new one, making sure that you are able to pick up the phone and give them a call if you have any questions. In regards to GDS and IDS, the date of go live, the new provider will activate the property and all the channels, making sure that you're bookable, making sure the display is correct. Some of the things that a lot of hoteliers tend to forget is that even though you've moved over to a new CRS, the old CRS will still have to terminate the property properly in the CRS in order to make sure that there's no hiccups during that transition. Sometimes there are GDS-driven corporate booking tools that are using the old CRS along with the old the GDS ID number, and if for any reason the old provider has not successfully terminated the property, it's going to cause issues with the GDS-driven corporate booking tools where the hotel will still be listed, but unfortunately it's still going to be pulling the data from the old CRS instead of the new CRS, so it kind of crisscrosses the traffic, in other words. So just making sure you communicate with the old CRS that they've removed the properties effectively, and that's removing the GDS PIDs from the mapping table on their side. And then on the IDS side of things, Disco is a company used for content distribution. So in that platform, the property could be listed under 2 chain codes. So making sure that the old CRS removes the property so that when they're sending the content out for the hotel, it's being sent out from the new provider, and there's not going to be a cross-reference to that content, or an OTA having trouble accessing the content because they're still getting it from 2 providers. So just kind of asking those types of questions, is my property going to be terminated on the day that I switch to the new provider? And if so, please ensure that the GDS mappings have been removed along with the old Disco property profile. So it's just kind of making sure that all those key elements are taken care of through those channels.
Very good. Chuck, talk to me about how effectively displaying your hotel through the various distribution channels is a roadblock. What are we talking about?
Well, depending on who you used prior, if there's any intermediary components to that, like where you have pictures or shared content, there may be some loyalty component to that. And, functionality can change drastically. You may have things that you're unaware of that you now have the ability to do. You also may have differences of opinion between properties, how they like to display things, where their structure should be for, selling top down or, specials, whatever. All that is part of why we're doing this, and a lot of times we put it all together and everything else, and they're thinking as they were with their old provider and their old booking engine or their old way to manage that data or that information. So I think it's real important that you get the marketing team together and the people that are responsible for that at each level, and be sure they understand the functionality and the new things that might be available to them, so that you can do a better job of getting people to book direct, which is what everybody's goal is. Also, the same sort of thing can happen, as Sally was talking about, IDS and GDS. The old stuff could live out there, especially if you've moved from a booking channel. You really would like that stuff redirected, if possible, depending on your relationship or what ownership you had of it. Those things can become broken or ineffective, and you need to make sure you clean all that up and work on a way to get everybody headed to your new page or your new location. So it doesn't do a whole lot of good to put all this together and have the old or limited functionality available to the guest. Makes sense?
Yeah. And just to add to that, and I think I kind of missed this on the last roadblock, was for any of the negotiated consortia rates, especially if you're going to be switching flags from one GDS chain code to the next, it's very important to make sure to communicate out to the travel agencies that you have switched chain codes. There is a little bit of the footwork that has to be done on the agency side in order for them to continue accessing the rate. You know, just make sure to convey that effectively over to the travel agencies. Make sure you have all that contact information. Touching on the marketing aspect of it, you know, just to reiterate, I mean, yeah, you do have to make sure that you're marketing the hotel effectively, for sure. Whether it's going from a booking engine standpoint to GDS to IDS, you know, making sure that the content is up to date. The imagery may take a while, especially if you're wanting to, you know, redo all of that. If not, you can use the existing images that you have with the previous provider. Always recommending high resolution across the board. You want to make sure that you have the best and the biggest pictures out there, so when they do get resized to the various OTAs, there's not going to be any distortion there. You know, looking at the rate plan cell sequencing, that is definitely part of the marketing as well, making sure that the rate plan name is on there, along with any sort of value adds. You definitely want to make sure that you deliver the message to all parties. You know, the booking engine display, I think the booking engine is very big. You know, seeing the functionality behind it, you know, what can I do? How can I display my rates? You know, do I want to go from a grid to a list view? You know, looking at the functionality overall for the booking engine, and is there anything, you know, I can do better to market it effectively? I know that during the implementation process, a lot of hoteliers want to revamp the content prior to the go live. Sometimes that's not always possible, and maybe left for a phase 2 approach. But if they're able to do that, then that's great. It'll just give it a facelift and make sure, you know, getting everybody the updated content across all channels prior to go live.
Very good, thank you. That was our last roadblock. We do have plenty of time for Q&A if you've got questions. We do have, well, the first question is the recording going to be available? And it will be. We'll email the recording out, and I'm even going to have it transcribed so you can read about it as well. And let's see. Here's a question. We have a SMS, PMS, pitfalls, interfacing. I'm not sure what the question is there.
I'm sure you do. You know, similar to what we had, Sally, where how things going to get pushed out of what system.
Yeah.
Is the one person going to own all of the delivery of of reservations. How are you going to touch the guest from which portal or which place? Um, yeah, all challenging. All stuff should be worked out, well before you're ready to put the first property on board.
Yeah, it's definitely, I think maybe something like that would help where the client, the PMS, the new provider all, get on the call and making sure that, they identify the questions, and then during the call they can review them as a whole and make sure that there's nothing that's going to be left out prior to the interface. Or if there are any red flags, they'll be identified on that call and then followed up with action items. So, I mean, that is probably my best advice to give on that one.
So the gist of this is primarily a people problem. So I have a stupid question, but maybe it's not. I mean, who are the key players in an implementation, a typical implementation?
Yeah, go ahead, Sally, from her stand.
I think it's going to be definitely the new provider, of course. The client are the two key players at the beginning, identifying all the services that are contracted. After that, then it'll evolve over to PMS.
What are these titles and these roles typically?
It could vary. I mean, it depends on the client. Are they is it a corporate that we're dealing with, or is it, a couple of individuals at a smaller group? I mean, it varies from hotel group to hotel group. I think with Chuck, it's been maybe two key players on his side, but then, it may drill down to the hotel where there's a lot of individual players for each property.
Are those key players, are they distribution specialists? Are they revenue managers? Are they?
Chuck, I think you can probably help me out on that one.
From our standpoint, it was really like a person like myself, which I think honestly is not just me, but we owned a PMS. We developed systems over the last 25 years internally with Vagabond, so I probably have a better understanding of the nightmare that this is than most people. But at the same time, all those people you talked about are important. The revenue guy needs to have some say. It really ends up being a representative of the property that's going to use this thing every day, whether that's a GM, sometimes it's the owner, sometimes it's a front desk manager. And then you really need to nail down a person like Sally and a representative from the property management side. We have Rui and several other people from SkyTouch that have been, key in making sure that when we do run into problems, or roadblocks, as we might say, that there is that communication and a way to, get those things cleaned up as quick as possible.
Who's usually the problem child?
The property,
The property?
the property, and the interface in general. Like we talked about before, the assumption that really everything's going to flow seamlessly is kind of hilarious.
I would imagine that the I'll just call it account management of the various technology providers probably varies to degree of engagement.
Yeah. And, we're talking about cloud stuff and how they access it. And, we run into everything from, helping them get their browser right to, really training on basic Windows things. So it's across the board.
All right. Well, I mean, we have no questions. We can wait. We got time, so if anyone wants to pop one in there real quick, I'll ask this. Do you guys have any parting thoughts? I mean, this is a big deal for folks.
Don't underestimate it, for sure. It's very complicated. There's a lot of moving parts, and there is just many ways for this to fall apart quickly. Do your due diligence. Be sure you're really tested to the best of your ability. And if there's any way to bite it off a part at a time, I would do that for sure. In this day and age, it's pretty tough. Most of these things really work together well because they're part of a group or a predefined partnership. That's probably the way it'll go. That's about it.
Communication all the way is very important. Making sure that everybody sticks to the task at hand, SLAs are met. You know, ask as many questions as you can. You know, it's really good to just put all those questions out there, just to confirm, you know, how the process is going to work, what's the day of go live, you know, what's going to happen, is there anything that I need to do from a client perspective or a vendor perspective. Just making sure that, you know, you ask questions, everybody communicates effectively, everybody's on the same page, and if there are any red flags, everybody's made aware of them.
Very good.
Great.
Well, I want to thank our panelists. Chuck, thank you very much for joining us.
Of course, anytime.
And of course, you too, Sally. Thanks for coming down the hall and
Thank you.
imparting that wisdom on us. For those you may see up on your screen, that's a resource that you may appreciate, some of you. It's an RFP template we co-created with John Burns, and also comes with a webinar recording on the topic, and the webinar has a transcript in case you just want to read it, but you can go to that URL and download it. I want to thank everybody for taking time out of their day to join us, and I hope you find this valuable, and we'll talk soon, I'm sure, and we'll end there. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone. Have a great day.
Thank you.